Okay, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host. Yes, I'm in La La Land again. Dan, thank you. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Karen. And today we are continuing our discussion of Leonardo and Gabriel by Tim Tigner, and we're on the chapter entitled Actions. Not that you need to see the chapter, but anyway, in this chapter, it talks about the the three actions generally assigned to God by monotheistic religions, and those actions are the unmoved mover, the God as a creator, and God as a judge. But before we get going on this topic, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then for those of you who are watching, if you want to join our discussion, jump into our Facebook group. There's a link below this video here on YouTube where you can jump into our Facebook group, and there you will find all the information you need to participate with us, or just one of us, and you can participate. So, okay, guys, intro yourself.
Good morning. I'm Karen Lohoff, and I'm in the East Valley of the Sun, which is the Phoenix area. The East Valley includes Mesa, which is where I'm at. And just something I think might be a little bit clarifying. Um, it's actually Aristotle who apparently wrote, I'm guessing, something called the unmoved mover, but I was unaware of that. And really, what that brought to Leonardo's mind was that, God started everything. He was the first force in the universe. So in this chapter, in God's actions, we see him as starting everything and as creator, and then what we're going to talk about today.
I'm Dan Sisek. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and looking forward to jumping in and joining and giving my thoughts on this also.
Wake up, Dan. That's okay. I was feeling like I wasn't really awake yet this morning either, which is, of course, I've been up a little bit longer probably than what you have, being over there on the far side of the land. It's 10 a.m. here. I know it's like, what, 7 a.m. over there? hmm It always amazes me, Karen, how high the sun is there as early as it is. I can see out your window how beautiful it is outside, and here I have kind of gloomy and snow, so I'd rather have the sun, but here we are. Anyway.
I have to mention that I noticed this morning that it was a lot more sunny than last week. That, just a week has really changed. I noticed that as we move from the winter equinox to the spring equinox, that things move really quickly. And I probably noticed that because, of course, we know we're headed for three-digit temperatures for over 100 days here where I live. So I'm kind of trying to stride lightly.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how we can. I don't know why. It just is sometimes that I can just be over here and it's snowing and cold, and then you can be over there and it's up in the high temperatures heading in the direction of the triple digits, and I still have like months until I get some 80s weather. So anyway. Oh, and then Dan, I know it's the same for you too because you're out there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we have similar weather. In fact, they're expecting that maybe tomorrow, and we're in January. This is a little early for us to do this. It usually happens in February, that we might get our first 70-degree day here. So, which we normally don't get that until about February. We'll get a few little peaks and get up into the 80s, and all of a sudden in March and stuff, it gets cold again. So, I hate that. I want it to get warm and stay warm.
Righto. I'm right there with you. Okay, so today we're talking about because last week we kind of talked about the unmoved mover or the force, the first force in the universe, and then God as a creator. And so this time we're going to be talking about God as a judge, and I find that one kind of interesting in an aspect of I feel like God as a judge is totally a religious thing, and I don't feel like that is in my mind. I feel like it's just I don't feel like it's a universal truth. I feel like it's just been handed down to us by religious organizations that God is a judge. What do you guys think?
I think for me, I think there's elements of judge, judgeality, judgmentalness, what, however you want it, how you say that. Trying to figure out how I would say that. Um, because in my inherent nature, there are things I know that I feel I inherently know are right. And when I go against those things that are inherently right, I feel that what I've done is wrong. So I think in that in that spirit and and how I feel that I am connected and have a relationship with God, the universe, or whatever, because we're all born, so to speak, out of it or created out of that and out of what um, God, the universe, the infinite intelligence, however you look at it, allow things to be created however it was done, that there are, rules and laws to natures and things and stuff and things. Some, if you kind of cross those lines, it's don't want to say necessarily judgmental, but I think in our mindset we kind of look at ourselves and then judge ourselves based on, oh well, that's what I feel is inherently right, or what, just in general. I mean, like if you look at kids, they tend to know when they've done something wrong, and they tend to shy away, or don't want to, always own up to it, or lie about it, or even as adults we do, because we don't want to deal with the results of what can happen by doing those things. So I think in that sense, there's some judgmentalness in there. I think in some ways society has added a lot of things to it, and it has become to where everything is so judged that sometimes you can't even really be yourself, either. That's kind of where I'm at and kind of where I'm headed. It's kind of hard to put it all into words for me.
I think this is possibly where the ambivalence that I was talking about earlier, I think before we started to record, comes in for me. I have on the one side of myself, on a personality that's very definitely um, been there throughout my life. I have a sense of judgment that I have more than maybe not, and possibly more than most people that I'm aware of, um, really resented and really rebelled about or against. I've talked often Not that anyone has listened to all of our, or maybe any of our recordings. I don't know. I've often talked about howling at the moon, and somebody asked me if I really did howl at the moon, and I thought, I guess there are people who do not grasp um, an alliteration about something that seems to be the best way of describing. I had found one time when I was exceptionally overwrought to the extent of having to pull off the side of the road with my business partner in the car with me, go off into a spot that was a dirt road, and the bushes in a desert area like the Phoenix area are not high, and they don't cover very well. And so, and because it was a full moon, I was trying to get away off the road as best I could, because I knew that I was not going to be able to, hold on to until I got to a bathroom. And I mean, that's how overwrought I was. I was shouting at my business partner, that not that she was doing anything that she shouldn't do. She wasn't doing anything wrong, or really even doing anything to irritate me. I was irritated with God, so irritated that I was doing all that shouting, which I called howling at the moon, because it was a full moon, and I found that it often was a full moon when I felt that way. Um, I did not like it that I was to, and in fact did love very much, this God that I made sure I prayed to every day. It was an ordeal for me to remember to pray every day, but I set up a kind of an alarm, you might say, in my head to make sure that I did do that, that I didn't have days that went by that I didn't pray, and so forth. So here I had this God that I loved, who sometimes would irritate me to the extent that I was just completely beside myself. So I had one aspect of my personality who just simply really did not like the thought or the idea of judgment. And on the other hand, I had the ability to be at peace with myself and think to myself, we're here to learn. If we're here to learn, we're not also here to be condemned. We're here to learn and to grow. And so I think that that's the best way I can explain the ambivalence that I have towards the so-called judgment of God.
I was going to say, wow, the way you explained that, um, this is going to get a little personal on my part, but it'll, because my mom used my real mother in when I was growing up and going through some of the abuses, but we could always tell when my mom was kind of getting ready to lose it, and it was always around a full moon, almost to a T. And that's when a lot of things would escalate and things would come about and stuff. Not saying that there weren't things that happened outside of that too, between my parents and stuff and with us kids and stuff, but I so get what you're saying, Karen. I lived it. I was one of the other side of that, and that has helped me as I've gotten older to kind of re-look at it and re-understand a lot of what my mom went through, and why maybe, like you said, that howling at the moon was because my real mom was married. I mean, was married when she was 15 and a half. She had me, her first child, when she was 16 and a half. Then 13 and a half months later, she had my sister. And then a year or two after that, she had one of my other brothers, and I don't know which order it is, but one was stillborn. And then the next brother, a couple of years after that, I think, he died of crib death. So the psychological aspects of everything everything. One being a kid herself, she got married. Two, getting pregnant, having kids, then going through the trauma and all that of having a child stillborn and then having one die a crib death. I can imagine all the things and all the, you know, hurt, pain, guilt, um, anger, you know, just at the world, and I think probably at God too. But there was also that, she also had some imbalances too that helped augment some of that, played into some of the, abuse and stuff. And I never was able to reconcile and get to that point until I got older. And like I said, hearing you say what you said just so resonates. And I know even for me personally, when I can feel the effects of when there's a full moon and when there's not, and I get irritated, not to the extent of getting mad or anything, but I can feel it. I tend to get a little more depressed, and then once the full moon's done and gone, I tend to get back to my normal self. But I've recognized that in myself a little bit, but it doesn't play out the same as it did. But wow, it's interesting to hear the way you said that and how you know we can get into those times where we feel that life has been so unfair and now we're turning around and judging life based on what we think and how we are going forward and how we think life, God, the universe, and everything is so unfair. But going back to everything has a cause and effect. So I think some of the choices, some of the things we do, and also play into that also play into how we feel and look and um, think of things in life too, and how we might feel judged.
I like how you bring up the action reaction aspect, and because I feel like for me that of course I was taught that God is the judge, and that if we don't obey the Ten Commandments, that we're going to be judged on that, at the pearly gates, and but I feel like it's more of a like I was saying before, that the religious organizations have kind of taken this judgment thing and gone so far with it. And I feel like the aspect of him being the judge is the same as like when parents are saying because I said so, and that instead of teaching us the what you were the whole aspect of actions and reactions, and that our actions have consequences in the universe and in our lives and in the world, is that we've just been told don't do these things, do those things, and if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. And um and I feel like that causes a lot of resentment in a lot of different ways. And instead of teaching us that when we do something that is unpleasant or that might feel, instead of teaching us empathy for one another or sympathy or the ability to see things from another person's point of view and see the world from a different point of view, we're just kind of here's this wall and you can't cross this line, and that's that. And but yet in the world there's so many different aspects to everything. And and sure, there's a lot of these things that in the Ten Commandments, obviously they're very grave things, they're very very big deal, like do not kill, obviously don't do that. But it's not, I feel like we don't not do that just because God said so, or because religion says God said so, but we don't do it because it hurts people. It affects people's lives, it affects everyone around us. And it's the same thing with some of the other one. And I don't know, I just I feel a lot of times that religion teaches us things like because it the people who've designed it, if you will, were too lazy to really teach us what we really needed to know. I mean, that's just kind of my personal opinion. And and I feel like, with my parents when I was younger, a lot of times they would tell me, no, I can't do something. And it would just be flat out, no, you can't do it. And there would be no explanation. And when I was a parent, or when my kids were teenagers, and they would say, "Can I do something?" I would try so hard not to just say no just because, and I would explain my reasoning behind it. No, you can't go over to your friend's house at 9 o'clock at night because, and I would explain. Here's the reasons why. A, I don't feel like driving over there. B, it's 9 o'clock at night. You're about ready to go to bed here in an hour. You got school in the morning. Blah blah blah. There's all these different things, and you know, and I feel like when we can talk to our children in a way that is more, here's the reality of the universe, and this is what you have to face in this situation. You aren't as resentful of it, if you will. I mean, I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts on that, and the whole judgment thing. And uh, because depending on how you see God, I mean, if you see God as benevolent and you see God as a universal force, eh, and the more that we talk about him in these different aspects, just in one of the previous ones where they started talking about him as a force versus a man in a white robe, is that, as an energetic force in the universe, how can he be judgmental? If we're looking at things in a scientific way, is a force judgmental? Is a light turning on and off judgmental? You know, is a is the sun, the energy that comes from the sun, is it judgmental? Does it decide? Does it say? I mean, and I don't know. I just don't see judgment as a thing that, if we look at God as all encompassing, all everywhere, all knowing, any everything, how can it be judgmental? Because good and bad is part of everything. And I don't know. That's my thought so far for now. Oh, we lost Karen. Oh, there she is. Maybe I just.
Well, I I get some of what you're saying, but I also think that we have to look at. I think without some, and I'm using this in a very broad-based format of judgment or things like that, we would have true utter chaos out there, and everybody's just kind of doing their own thing with however they felt, and who knows what could erupt out of that too. I'm not saying that all the laws or all the things or all the get-ups and everything are all necessarily right or the best things, but at the same point, I think that in order to have some guidelines, I guess, for lack of a better word, in how I'm trying to say this, um, there have to be some established norms or rules, or I'm trying not to use rules, but no, of what is accepted in order for things to kind of, you know, coexist and work together. I mean, even in nature, you see some laws out there that work to kind of help, you know, keep things in a decent balance, not necessarily, um, so I think there's got to, be some framework of something that kind of, and how you get that. I think you can't just arbitrarily. You kind of have to use, and I'm using judgment in a different form, but judgment in a way of coming up with what is something that can be agreed upon, I guess. Because I mean, this is a big. It's kind of hard to encompass and fully grasp how this affects everything, or at least to me, I guess.
Well, I think that what you're talking about is not the same as judgment as far as a God is concerned. I think that obviously we all have to have some kind of way of living with one another where we have some level of expectations of what we can expect from one another. And I think that culture to culture, and of course country to country, and different, um even family to family, we all have different rules in the way that we kind of interact with one another. But I I think that we would have that regardless of whether or not, God necessarily laid down these specific laws and said that if you don't follow these rules, you're going to hell. I think that instead, if we hadn't had that, we would all have figured out how to get along with one another by recognizing that, okay, well, if I do this to one, if I go and kill somebody just for the sake of killing someone, there's going to be an action. There's going to be a reaction from that. I mean, and this has happened even with God as a uh, as a judge in the religious belief system, is that it still has, because there's been people that have not known those laws. And and there's still people in the world that indigenous, you know um, groups of people that don't go by the words of God. They go by their own ideas of how the world works, but that still they have to be around one another and they have to interact with one another. And when you have an action, you do something that hurts someone else, there's obviously a reaction from that. And so I think that inherently most people want to get along with one another. And I think that it's not because of judgment from God or from an idea that there might be a judgment from God, but it's because we truly want to get along with one another. And it hurts. And we know what it feels like when something horrible happens to us. And so, therefore, we don't necessarily want to cause that kind of pain to someone else. Now, I mean, obviously, there are outliers in that when there's people who are, unsympathetic or have no empathy, or are psychopaths or whatever, and they just don't feel the same way. I think you can have that regardless. But as far as this aspect that God is a judge, I really just feel like that is not necessarily a universal truth. I think that it is something cooked up by religious organizations to keep people in line. And but that's just kind of my thought. And even in here in this book, Leonardo kind of he questions the judgment aspect of God. And he says, I'm puzzled by what it means for God to judge all things. The church would have us believe that righteous go to heaven and wicked go to hell, but that's a single binary decision. Excuse me, my throat is irritated today. I don't know if you can tell by my voice. Um, and he says, and it seems contradictory to the fundamental idea that God judges all things. Um, People take millions of consequential actions in their lives. Some are good, some are bad. A man might save a child's life one day and kill a child the next. In some, he might do a million good things and a million and one bad, while another might do a million and one good and a million bad. To to give one man an eternity of heaven and the other everlasting hell for essentially the same score just doesn't strike me as just. It strikes me as a crude and uninspired shortcut. Which is another reason why I feel like, it was more of a the whole idea of judgment was cooked up by religious organizations, um, just for the simple thought that this is a simple way to put it, rather than trying to explain to everybody why you should be nice to each other, is let's just say, if you're not nice to each other, you're gonna go to hell. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking. Morning, Catherine, by the way. Maybe you have something to add to that. It looks like you're driving, so glad you're here.
I think she's driving too, but I I still come back to the idea that, okay, yeah, everybody could still come to, you know, but how do, even though if there are if there's no judgment, then how do each, and you pointed out yourself, in indigenous groups and stuff, they've come to where they, how do, and in most of these cases, in most of these indigenous groups, they still have some way of looking at a source or something that is above and beyond and more powerful than them. So again, also, and they have their own thoughts and concepts of, you know, that gave them to where they learn to somehow get along. So somehow they came up with rules and regulations too, and judgments on things too. So I think there's something still out there that causes us to, because I truly believe that we are born out of the spirit, or the universe, God, for me, God, and things like that. So in that inherent knowledge that is there has also been passed on to us. So I think it's still something that's still rooted in us, and I still think that those aspects of right and wrong, judging, right and wrong and judging and stuff like that is still inherent within our our being, our soul, our of who we are. So I still think that um, it's still something that's inside of us and a part of us. Granted, um, people have taken some liberties with it, and and that might be part of the reason why we have a lot of the anonymity and hostility and hatred out there in the world, of how people, you know and cause things to be the way they are even now, because we still do not live in a world of true, you know that everybody agrees on how and what and ways and stuff. So I like I said, I think it still goes back to, it's something born into us from being born out of the universe, God, infinite intelligence, where we were created from and out of.
Well, being Native American, our tribes uh, definitely have a reverence for nature, but nobody locked their teepee, nobody stole shit, nobody, feared going to hell. And I don't think we learn fear until we're taught fear. I don't think it's innate. I mean, there may be some sort of survival mechanism built in there, like initially we were tribal peoples, and if you were outcast from the tribe, then you would probably die. So maybe there's that aspect, but I don't think, because as souls, as eternal souls, what I believe we are, this is not our only existence. I mean, we are other creatures and other beings, and And I think a lot of this shit was just made up to control people. Sorry, and I've admitted multiple times that perhaps it was a hallucination that I was having, but Jesus himself told me there's no judgment. So I have to go by my own personal experience on that. And I agree with, in the book, we all, there's nobody on this planet that has not done something bad at some point in their life, and something that the Bible would tell us they would go to hell for. And I'm sorry, but I just don't believe that, you can do whatever the hell you want and then just ask Jesus to come into your life and it's all rosy and good. I think there just isn't judgment to begin with, because I think that those acts are predetermined, to learn certain things. You cannot, just the simple concept of pain, nerve pain specifically, if you've never experienced nerve pain, you have no idea what it is. If you've never experienced an illness which causes people to abandon you and step away, and feeling completely by yourself, if you've never had that experience, you don't know what it is. So I think that we have to go through these hardships to learn compassion, to learn forgiveness. Um, we have to go through situations where we make bad decisions, and we say hateful things, and to learn remorse, to learn that we are not all that, and that we mess up too, and I've started watching. One of my writers actually told me about this documentary on Netflix that is blowing my mind. I mean, I knew about some of our scientific advances, but I didn't know about some of these. And it's called unnatural selection, and they're actually, they're messing with creation. they're altering DNA, in people's garages. It's not in big research institutions. We're talking about just cooking up something on your stove in the kitchen, and it's I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, obviously, I want certain diseases cured and things like that, and anything genetic they can cure at this point with this CRISPR situation. But there's stuff way beyond CRISPR even, and people are using it to alter themselves. I mean, they could make themselves biological weapons, in fact. Um, so, I mean, do those people go to hell? I don't know. You know, I mean, I go back to the shack. I love, my favorite line of that movie is when the father's asking God, so this is where your wrath comes in, right? And God looks at him and says, my what? And then later in the movie, God puts the man through an experience himself so that he can understand who could choose, which of their children to damn forever. Forever is a long time, guys. Like, when you're eternal, that's a long time. So I believe God wants all of us. I mean, if you think about, if you had a child, or even a dog, or a bird, or anything that you loved, and it got gravely ill, or it did something that society would deem inappropriate, like my son had a drug problem, and pretty much my entire family has stepped away from him. I'm the only one in the family, and he's been clean for years, but like, they still hold it against him. I just want him safe and alive. And, I mean, I forgave him. Yeah, he did some bad shit while he was doing that, but I mean, I forgave him immediately, and my love is nothing compared to what I believe God's would be. So that's my 2 cents. Y'all have heard it before.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't feel like God is judgmental at all. That's not been my experience. And I think we as humans are judgmental. And like you said, your family can't forgive your son, even though it's been years. And I feel like that is just it's very human. Judgment is. And we decide what we believe is right, what is wrong, and then anybody who is kind of outside of those definitions, we have very, very strong opinions about that. And and that and so that's kind of the thing, isn't it? I mean, we're the ones that are the ones that are judgmental. I don't feel like God is at all. I think that God just is, and we just are, and everything just is. There's no bad and good. It just is. There's things that feel unpleasant, and there's things that feel pleasant, and there's things that are painful, and there's things that are pleasurable, and we have chosen to decide. We've chosen to say that all these pleasurable things are good, and all these painful things are bad, and we are upset about the bad stuff. And so those are the things that we judge to be not good. Um, but like you were saying, Catherine, about being a parent, I um I, I want my kids to be able to figure things out for themselves too. I don't want to just say you know no just for the sake of saying no and not give any explanation or not have. I would, sure, there's some times where I give my kids advice and I'm like, hey, you really ought to do this because this is what could happen, but they have to figure that out on their own. They can't. They I can't tell you how many times I didn't listen to my parents, and I had to learn something on my own in order to truly understand it. And and I think that God wants us to be able to figure those things out. I don't think that He has just set down these laws and said, "Hey, you can't do these things," and with no explanation. I think that and I don't think that us as humans need to be told, what's right and what's wrong. Is It's just because we experience what is good, what feels good, and what feels bad. And when we experience those things, and we have empathy for those other people who have experienced those things, and I I just I don't know. That's what I'm thinking on this. Karen, are you still out there with us? I see that we have kind of a black screen for you. Can you see Karen? Dan? Are you just seeing a black screen too?
Yeah, black screen with her name, but it doesn't even show her
Yeah.
saying that that her mic muted or that her camera's muted or anything.
Right. Huh. I don't know what's happened to her. Um, I don't know. Furthermore, in this chapter, he talks a lot about heaven and hell being. Well, he says, let's see, as it was kind of going on from what I had read before. Um, Gabriel was saying, you began by saying the church would have us believe, and churches are no different from other institutions. In order to connect with the masses, they have to simplify things to a level low enough that everybody can comprehend. Scholars and shepherds, princes and paupers. Heaven and hell are concepts that even the modest minds can grasp. And and I think that I feel like that's kind of what has happened is that, religious organizations have, maybe they realize you can't teach everything to everyone. You can't expect everyone to feel what everyone else has felt or have empathy for every situation when they haven't experienced it. And so then they're trying to boil things down to the simplest possible thing, and that basically is, if you do something wrong, you're going to go to hell. Whereas maybe the definition of hell is what has been distorted, because hell can mean different things to different people. If you look at it on just a religious aspect of, like the fiery pits of hell, rather than looking at it as you can make your own life into a living hell by doing something that hurts other people or that causes great disorder in your community, or we can make our lives a living hell just in and of ourselves by doing something horrible to a person in our lives. And if we don't I mean, if you don't know that that's going to happen, and no one's ever taught you that that's going to happen, you wouldn't know that it's going to happen. And so maybe it was just easiest, for churches to say, look, here, heaven and hell. If you do this, it's going to be bad for you, and this is how we think it'll be bad. But yet, in our life experience, the bad part is that if you do this bad thing, all these other people are going to be mad at you, and therefore they're going to cause your life to be a living hell. And I think that, Dan, when you're talking about being able to live with one another, how can we possibly live with one another without laws and rules and that sort of thing? Is that it's like the difference between living in the U.S. and living in a dictatorship. Here in the U.S., we all kind of, to some extent, we think we do anyway, we all vote on what we think the laws should be, right? So we all come together and we all debate all about it, and then we change the laws according to what we all agree upon. And we didn't need necessarily for a God to be judgmental in order for that to happen. I think that we would have come to that conclusion one way or another, is either A, we would have experienced a dictatorship for long enough that we would rebel against it and then end up making our own way and coming together as a community, making decisions for a group. I don't know. I think that would have happened whether we had religion telling us that God was going to judge us or not. I think that we would have come to the conclusion that in order to live with one another in harmony, we have to work together in some way and agree upon some ways of being with one another. So, yeah, I think you're right, Dan. I'm not sure what happened with Karen. I wonder if she was having internet issues or something. We're right at the top of the hour. I think I need to read more of that chapter and figure out what else they were saying about this aspect.
Yeah, I need to really kind of get more of my thoughts on it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to get going because I'm doing my church outreach today where we're feeding the Veterans Village homeless. So I want to get going for that.
I just wanted to say one other thing before we leave this kind of topic behind. And one thing that's kind of gotten in my mind recently since we've started this book is that I feel like we diminish our own capabilities by narrowing it down to only one idea of what God can be. And I feel like in some ways this judgment aspect kind of brings that out, because if we say that we are only good because God has ordained these rules and that we will be judged, I feel like that diminishes our capability as humans to be more than capable of being this without him being judgmental. Do you understand what I'm saying there? It's kind of like, if we sit here and we say the only reason we're good is because of God saying that we better be good or we're going to be in trouble, I feel like that diminishes our capability as humans to be good with one another outside of that. Do you understand what I'm saying, Catherine?
Yeah, and I honestly say, and I my memory's not the best, okay, but I can never remember a situation in my life, in this lifetime, where I have chosen not to do something for fear of judgment of God. I cannot remember a time, an action taken. Now, I don't know what that says about me, but I'm just making that point.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like more than anything, if I have struggled with a decision, it wasn't because I thought that God was going to rain wrath down on me. It was because I was maybe in disagreement with another person, or in disagreement of what the consequences might be, or upset because I knew what the consequences would be and I still wanted to do the thing. So um, that's I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. So anyway, we can talk more about it next week. We've got a whole nother week ahead of us. We can read through the chapters a little more, think about these things a little bit more. Hopefully Karen will be able to. I don't know what happened with Karen. So hopefully she's okay, and maybe she had a power outage or something. Um, anyway, have a great week, guys. And Dan, did you want to add anything else before we jump off?
No, because right now I'm just thinking over that I want to get deeper into this chapter and kind of get more of my own thoughts and kind of review my feelings and my thoughts on it. Because I still believe a lot of what how I look at it, and I still think things play off of each other. I still think there's, and maybe the way I'm saying it is not the way I'm in my head. So I want to get in and kind of review and look over some things.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye. Oh, there's Aaron.